She humiliated me on national television, told the world I was nothing, a failure, a man who couldn't provide. The audience erupted in applause as she walked away victorious, but in my pocket was a letter that would change everything. She had no idea what I'd become overnight. Terrence Williams was 37 years old, been working the same warehouse supervisor job for 8 years, and married to a woman who used to look at him like he hung the moon. That morning started at 6:47 when someone knocked on his apartment door. Not a regular knock either. This was that official knock, that knock that makes your stomach drop because you know whoever's on the other side ain't bringing good news or selling cookies. Terrence opened the door still in his undershirt and sweatpants, and standing there was this older white man in a suit that probably cost more than Terrence's monthly rent. The man had silver hair, kind eyes, and was holding a leather briefcase like it contained government secrets. He introduced himself as Mr. Harold Peterson, attorney at law, and asked if he could come inside. Said it was about Terrence's uncle, Cleveland Morris. Now, Terrence hadn't heard that name in years. Uncle Cleveland was the family ghost story, the man who disappeared 30 years ago after everyone said he'd never amount to nothing. Family reunions, someone would always bring him up with a laugh. Remember Cleveland? Thought he was too good for the family, probably living under a bridge somewhere. That kind of talk. Terrence always wondered what really happened to him, but nobody ever had real answers. Mr. Peterson sat down at Terrence's small kitchen table and pulled out documents, legal papers with official seals and signatures that looked important. He explained that Uncle Cleveland had passed away 3 days ago in Detroit. Massive heart attack. He'd been living there for the past 28 years, and apparently he'd been doing a whole lot more than surviving. The man had built an empire, a real estate empire that nobody in the family knew existed. The lawyer slid the papers across the table. Uncle Cleveland had left everything to Terrence. Everything. $8.2 million in liquid cash sitting in bank accounts. 47% ownership in a company called Morris and Associates Commercial Real Estate, valued at $127 million. 12 properties scattered across Detroit, some of them rented to Fortune 500 companies, worth about $23 million combined. Mr. Peterson did the math right there at the table. Terrence was looking at inheriting a $158 million empire. Terrence's hands started shaking. He read the letter Uncle Cleveland left 3 times before the words made sense. The letter was short, handwritten. It said, "They laughed at me too. Prove them all wrong. Build something they can't tear down. The money is yours. The properties are yours. Make it count, nephew." That was it. No long explanation, no apologies for disappearing, just that. Mr. Peterson explained that Terrence needed to come to the law office the next day to verify his identity and sign ownership documents. Said it was all legitimate, all legal, all real. Then the man left, and Terrence sat there at his kitchen table staring at papers worth more money than he'd ever imagined in his entire life. His hands were still shaking, his mind was racing, and his wife, Candace, was still asleep in the bedroom. Candace Williams was 35, beautiful in that way that made people stop and stare, and she'd built herself a decent following on social media. 430,000 followers watching her post about fashion, lifestyle, relationships. She called herself a content creator and influencer, and honestly, she was good at it. The problem was, over the past 6 months, she'd become different, distant, always on her phone, always dressed up like she was going somewhere important, always too busy to really talk to Terrence about anything that mattered. That morning, Terrence heard her moving around in the bedroom. It was 8:15. He'd been sitting at that table for over an hour trying to process what just happened. He walked into the bedroom and Candace was doing her makeup. Full face, hair perfect. She had on this dress he'd never seen before, designer looking, the kind of outfit that cost money they definitely didn't have in their joint account. Terence tried to tell her about the lawyer, about Uncle Cleveland, about the inheritance, but Candace cut him off before he could get 3 sentences out. She said, "I don't have time for your stories right now, Terence. I have something important today." She didn't even look at him when she said it, just kept applying mascara in the mirror like he wasn't even there. He noticed a suitcase by the door, packed. He figured maybe she had some content creation trip she forgot to mention. He tried again. "Candace, this is serious. My uncle left me." But she held up her hand, stopped him mid-sentence. She said she had to go, had somewhere to be, and they'd talk later. Then she grabbed that suitcase and walked out the door. Didn't kiss him goodbye, didn't say "I love you," just left. And Terence stood there in their bedroom holding the most important news of his life, with nobody to share it with. At 10:30, Terence got a text from Candace. It said, "Turn on Channel 7, The Charisse Watson Show, noon. You need to see something." That was it. No explanation, no context, just those 2 sentences that felt like they had weight behind them. Terence showed the text to his co-worker Darnell during their break at the warehouse. Darnell looked at it and his face changed. He said, "Man, that's that relationship talk show, the one where people air out their business in front of the whole world. Why your wife want you watching that?" Terence didn't have an answer. He tried calling Candace, straight to voicemail, tried again, same thing. That anxiety that had been sitting in his chest all morning got heavier. Something wasn't right. He told his supervisor he needed to go home early. Family emergency. The supervisor let him go, and Terence drove that beat-up 2004 Honda Civic with the broken air conditioning back to his apartment, the whole time wondering what the hell was about to happen. He got home at 11:45, 15 minutes before noon. He turned on Channel 7 and there it was. The Charisse Watson Show. Live audience. Bright lights. Charisse Watson herself, this popular daytime host who everyone knew, sitting across from Candace, his wife, sitting in the guest chair, looking confident and beautiful and completely calm. Terence's heart dropped into his stomach. He sat down on the couch and his hand went to his jacket pocket. The inheritance letter was still there, folded up, proof that his entire life had changed this morning. But right now, watching that screen, he had no idea his life was about to change again in a completely different way. Charisse Watson smiled at the camera and said, "Welcome back, everyone. Today's topic, when you've outgrown your partner. And we have a very special guest who's about to share her truth with all of America." The live audience, probably 300 people, all leaned forward. Candace smiled. That smile Terence knew so well. That smile she used when she was about to get exactly what she wanted. Charisse turned to Candace and said, "Candace, you have something to tell America today, don't you?" And Candace nodded. She looked directly at the camera, directly into homes across the country, directly at Terence sitting on his couch. And she said, "Yes, Charisse, I'm announcing my divorce. Today. Live. Right now." The audience gasped. That collective gasp you hear when something shocking happens. Terence felt like someone had punched him in the chest. Divorce? She was announcing their divorce on national television, without even telling him first, without even having a conversation. But Candace wasn't done. Not even close. Charisse asked her to explain, to share her story, and Candace did. She talked about Terence like he was a case study in failure, said he'd been the same broke warehouse worker for 8 years with no ambition to do better, said he was still driving a 2004 Honda Civic with broken air conditioning while she was out here trying to build a brand, said they lived in a rental apartment because he couldn't save money, couldn't plan for the future, couldn't provide the life he'd promised her when they got married. The audience was eating it up. Women in the crowd nodding their heads. Someone yelled out, "You deserve better, girl." Another voice, "Leave him. And Candace kept going. She pulled out her phone and showed Instagram stories on the big screen. Pictures of her at nice restaurants, at events, living what looked like a glamorous life. Then she showed a picture of their apartment, their small, humble two-bedroom rental apartment. The contrast was intentional, brutal. Charisse Watson, playing her role perfectly, asked, "What's the final straw that made you do this publicly?" And Candace's answer hit Terrence like a second punch. She said, "Last week I asked him for $300 to invest in my content business. You know what he said? We can't afford it. $300. That's when I knew I married a man with no vision, no ambition, no future." Then Candace did something that made Terrence's blood go cold. She showed a photo of him. A photo she'd secretly taken of him at work in his warehouse uniform, dirty from the job, tired, looking every bit like a man who worked hard for modest pay. She put that photo on the big screen and the audience laughed. Actually, laughed at him, at his life, at his struggle. Charisse Watson asked, "Ladies, is this the man you want to grow old with?" And the crowd, in unison, screamed, "No!" Candace wiped away a tear, a single, perfect tear that looked rehearsed. She said, "I love myself too much to stay broke. Today I choose me." The audience gave her a standing ovation. 300 people on their feet, clapping, cheering her decision to leave her husband on live television. Terrence sat on that couch, stunned, frozen. His phone started blowing up. Text messages, calls, notifications. Within 15 minutes, clips from the show were everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram Reels. The hashtag Team Candace was trending. People he'd never met were commenting on his life, his marriage, his worth as a man. The comments were vicious. She did what she had to do. That man looked dusty anyway. He's probably at home crying right now. That last one was almost accurate, almost. His phone kept ringing. His mama, his sister, his boys from high school. Even his boss texted, "Bro, you good?" 47 missed calls. Over 200 text messages. The internet had turned him into a meme in less than an hour. And Terrence sat there, alone in the apartment he shared with a woman who just publicly destroyed him, and he pulled out that letter from his pocket. The inheritance letter. The letter that proved that this morning, before any of this happened, he'd become worth $158 million. 3 hours later, Terrence's phone rang again. This time, it was Brianna, Candace's younger sister, 28 years old, always been the quieter one in the family, the one who asked how you were actually doing instead of just making small talk. She was crying when Terrence answered. She said, "Terrence, I'm so sorry. I didn't know she was going to do this. I swear I didn't know." Terrence asked what she meant, and Brianna told him everything. Turns out Candace had been planning this for 4 months. 4 months. She had a new boyfriend. His name was Khalil Durant, 41 years old, music producer, the kind of man who posted pictures of himself with expensive watches and luxury cars and bottles at the club. They'd met at an influencer event in Miami, and Candace had been flying there once a month, using brand deals as her excuse to leave town. Khalil had promised to elevate Candace's career, promised to introduce her to celebrities, to help her break into the next level of influencer success. And the live television divorce? That was his idea. He told her it would be a viral moment that would boost her brand, get her millions of views, open doors. And Candace believed him. She believed him enough to humiliate her husband in front of the entire country. But Brianna had more to tell him, something Candace didn't know. Khalil was married, had a whole wife who had no idea he was running around with Instagram influencers. Brianna had found out by accident, saw something on his social media that didn't add up. Did some digging. She'd tried to tell Candace, but Candace didn't want to hear it. She was too invested, too deep, too blinded by the promise of fame and money and whatever else Khalil was selling her. Terrence thanked Brianna for telling him, and after he hung up, he just sat there, processing. His wife had been cheating on him for months, had planned this public humiliation for months, had thrown away 8 years of marriage for a man who was married himself, for a viral moment, for followers and likes and brand deals, and she had no idea that the man she called broke was now worth more money than she'd ever see in her lifetime. That evening, at 6 o'clock, Mr. Peterson called. The lawyer had seen the news, had seen the clips online. He asked if Terrence was all right, and Terrence gave the only answer that made sense. He said, "I'm about to be worth over $150 million, and my wife just divorced me on TV without knowing. I don't know what I am." Mr. Peterson explained the next steps. Terrence needed to come to the law office tomorrow to verify his identity and sign the ownership documents. The inheritance included those 12 commercial properties in Detroit. Some were rented to Fortune 500 companies. The monthly revenue from those properties alone was $680,000 every month. Terrence was about to become one of the wealthiest black men in Michigan, and nobody knew. Nobody except him and Mr. Peterson. The lawyer asked a question that hung in the air. "How do you want to handle this?" Terrence didn't have an answer yet. But he knew one thing. He wasn't about to announce this to the world. He wasn't about to post it on social media or run back to Candace or make a big show. Something in him, maybe it was Uncle Cleveland's letter, maybe it was the humiliation he'd just experienced, told him to move in silence, to build something real before people even knew he had the tools to build with. At 9:30 that night, someone knocked on Terrence's door, that official knock again. But this time, when he opened it, it wasn't a lawyer. It was Khalil Durant in the flesh. Expensive cologne hit Terrence's nose before the man even spoke. Designer clothes, confidence that bordered on arrogance, that smirk that said he'd already won and was just here to collect his trophy. Khalil said, "Look, man, no hard feelings. Candace and we're on a different level. You understand?" He was there to collect Candace's remaining things. Boxes of her clothes, her products, her equipment, stuff she didn't want to face Terrence to get herself. Khalil walked into the apartment like he owned it, like Terrence was just a tenant who'd overstayed his welcome. Then Khalil did something that would have broken a lesser man. He pulled out his wallet and counted out $5,000 in cash, $100 bills, crisp and new. He put them on the counter and said, "For your troubles, get yourself something nice, maybe fix that car." He actually said that, with that smirk still on his face, with that tone that said he pitied Terrence, that said Terrence was beneath him. Terrence looked at the money. Then he looked at the inheritance letter sitting on his counter, partially visible under some mail. Then he looked back at Khalil and said, "Keep it. You're gonna need it more than me." Khalil laughed, actually threw his head back and laughed like that was the funniest thing he'd heard all day. He said, "Broke man pride, that's why you lost her, bro." Then he left the cash anyway, grabbed Candace's boxes, and walked out. Left the door open behind him like Terrence wasn't even worth the courtesy of closing it. At 11 o'clock, Terrence got a text from Brianna. It said, "Please don't tell Candace about any money you get. She'll come back and destroy you." Then Brianna sent more messages, revealing things Terrence never knew. Candace had convinced their parents to loan her $35,000 last year for investments. Never paid a dollar back. Candace had used Terrence's credit cards without telling him, racked up $18,000 in debt that he was still paying off month by month. Brianna's final text said, "My sister is beautiful and charming, but she's also ruthless. She sees people as opportunities." Terrence read those words 3 times. People as opportunities. That's what he'd been to Candace. An opportunity that stopped paying dividends, so she traded him in for a better one, or what she thought was a better one. 2 weeks passed. Terrence took ownership of Morris and Associates Commercial Real Estate. Quietly, no announcements, no press releases. He met the executive team, and they were shocked when they found out he was Cleveland Morris's nephew. The CFO, a sharp black woman named Loretta Freeman, who was 56 and had been with the company for 15 years, looked at him with tears in her eyes. She said, "Your uncle built this from nothing. He'd be proud of you." Terrence learned the business, asked questions, read reports, studied financials. He paid off all his debts. The credit card debt Candace had left him with, his student loans, his car loan, everything. Then he moved out of that apartment into a modest but beautiful loft downtown. Nothing flashy, just clean and comfortable, and his. He bought a Tesla, not because he wanted to flex, but because he needed reliable transportation. It was understated, black, no custom rims or loud colors, just a good car. And he kept going to his warehouse job, gave his 2-week notice properly, finished out his time with respect. His co-workers threw him a little goodbye party, and nobody knew he was now worth more than all of them combined. He just told them he was moving on to a new opportunity. Meanwhile, Candace's influencer career exploded. 430,000 followers jumped to 1.2 million in 2 weeks. Brand deals came flooding in. A PR agency reached out wanting to represent her. She was everywhere. Posts with Khalil at luxury restaurants, courtside seats at basketball games, private jet photos with champagne glasses. The comments on her posts were all the same. "You glowed up, living your best life." He could never. She posted a photo of her hand with a new diamond bracelet. The caption said, "When you know your worth, the universe delivers. #new beginnings. #level up." 15,000 likes in an hour. Everyone celebrating her for leaving Terrence. Everyone agreeing she'd made the right choice. 3 weeks after the show, everything started to unravel. Khalil's wife found out. Turned out she was a successful attorney, connected, ruthless in her own right. And when she found out her husband was running around with a younger woman, playing house with someone else's life, she went nuclear. Posted screenshots, bank statements, text messages, everything. She exposed Khalil and Candace all over social media, tagged them, tagged their families, made it public in a way that couldn't be ignored or deleted or spun. The posts revealed something that broke Candace's whole world apart. Khalil wasn't wealthy. None of it was real. He rented everything. The cars were leased under other people's names. The houses in his photos belonged to friends or were Airbnbs. He was deep in debt, over $300,000, and he had a pattern. 6 other women before Candace. He'd find influencers or aspiring models, promise them the world, use their money and connections, then move on to the next one. Those private jet photos Candace had been posting, they were from a rental service for influencers. $400 an hour to take pictures inside a jet that never left the ground. The internet turned on Candace instantly. That's how fast it happens online. One day you're the hero, the next day you're the villain. People started calling her a homewrecker, even though she didn't know Khalil was married. Brands dropped her, partnerships ended. The PR agency ghosted her. She lost 400,000 followers in 48 hours. Blog headlines ran wild. Influencer who divorced broke husband for producer. Both broke. The same people who'd celebrated her were now tearing her apart. Khalil disappeared, blocked her number, blocked her on every social media platform, changed his address. Gone. Like he'd never existed, and Candace was left holding the wreckage of everything she'd destroyed to be with him. She had to move back in with her parents. The same parents she'd borrowed $35,000 from and never paid back. The humiliation was complete. 1 month after the show, Terrence had a business dinner downtown with his executive team. They were discussing expansion plans, looking at properties in Chicago and Atlanta, talking about growth strategies and market analysis. It was a nice restaurant, the kind with white tablecloths and wine lists that required explanation. Loretta Freeman was there. 2 other executives. They were treating Terrence like he'd always been part of the team, like he belonged in these rooms, making these decisions. And that's when Candace walked in. She was wearing the restaurant's standard uniform. Black pants, white shirt, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She was working there as a hostess, needed the money, needed to start over somehow. Their eyes met across the restaurant and everything stopped for a second. She froze. Terrence could see it in her face. The recognition, the shock, the confusion. He carried himself differently now, dressed better, held his head higher. She knew something had changed, but she didn't know what. After dinner, after the contracts were discussed and the deals were made, Candace approached the table. Her hands were shaking. She said, "Terrence, can we talk?" He excused himself from his team, and they stepped outside. The night air was cool. October in Detroit. She was crying before she even started speaking. She said, "I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. That man played me. I lost everything. My followers, my deals, my reputation, everything. And you're different now. I can see it." Terrence stood there, calm, quiet. He just said, "I am different." Candace reached for his hand. "Can we try again? I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong. But we had 8 years together. That meant something, didn't it? That has to count for something." There were real tears now, genuine regret, the kind that comes when you realize you've destroyed something you can't get back. Terrence pulled out his phone. He showed her a photo. Recent photo from last week. It was Brianna, Candace's younger sister, and Terrence having coffee together, sitting at a cafe, smiling, not posed, just natural, real. Candace's face changed. Confusion, then understanding, then devastation. She said, "You're with Brianna?" Her voice cracked on her sister's name. Terrence put his phone away. "Not yet, but maybe." She checked on me every day after the show, called me, made sure I was okay. We talked, really talked, not about social media or followers or brand deals, about real things, about life and family and what matters. She's nothing like you, Candace. She values character over clout. Candace stepped back like he'd slapped her. "You would do that? Date my sister, my own sister?" Terrence looked at her, really looked at her, and he said, "You did worse on national television. You humiliated me in front of millions of people. Called me broke, called me worthless, made me a joke. The difference? I'm giving her a choice. I'm giving her honesty, something you never gave me." Then he walked away, turned his back on 8 years of marriage, on the woman he used to love, on all of it. Just walked away. Candace stood there on that sidewalk, outside the restaurant where she now worked as a hostess, making minimum wage plus tips, watching the man she'd destroyed become someone she'd never have again, watching him walk to a Tesla she didn't know he owned, watching him drive away into a life she'd never be part of. 2 months later, Terrence stood at Uncle Cleveland's grave. It was a Saturday morning, early. The cemetery was quiet except for birds and wind through the trees. The headstone was simple, black granite, clean letters. It said, "Cleveland Morris, they doubted. He built, he won." Terrence wasn't alone. Brianna was with him. They were holding hands, not for show, not for social media, no cameras, no posts, just 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of someone else's choices. 2 people who understood what it meant to value character over appearances. They'd been seeing each other for a month, taking it slow, building something real, something that didn't need an audience to validate it. Terrence placed flowers on the grave, white roses, Uncle Cleveland's favorite, according to Loretta Freeman, who'd known him for years. Terence said a quiet prayer, thanked his uncle for the inheritance, for the opportunity, for the letter that told him to prove them wrong. But more than that, he thanked him for the lesson that success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about building something they can't tear down, something that matters beyond money and fame and what people think. Brianna squeezed his hand. She understood. She'd lost a sister through all this. Candace wouldn't speak to her anymore, called her a traitor, called her worse things. But Brianna chose truth over family loyalty, chose someone who'd been treated wrong over someone who'd done the wrong. And she didn't regret it. As they walked back to the car, Terence thought about that morning 3 months ago. The morning the lawyer knocked on his door. The morning his wife was getting ready to destroy him on national television. The morning he became wealthy but lost his marriage. If you'd told him then that this is where he'd end up, standing at his uncle's grave with Candace's sister by his side, running a multi-million-dollar company, at peace, he wouldn't have believed you. Life has a way of working out that doesn't follow the script you write in your head. The wealth helped. He'd be lying if he said it didn't. Money solved problems, opened doors, created opportunities, but it didn't make him happy. What made him happy was knowing he'd handled it right. Didn't flaunt it, didn't use it to hurt Candace back even though he could have. Didn't post screenshots of his bank account or his properties or his success, just to prove a point. He moved in silence, built in silence, won in silence, just like Uncle Cleveland had done 30 years before him. Candace was still working at that restaurant last he heard, still trying to rebuild her life one shift at a time, still dealing with the consequences of choosing wrong, trusting wrong, destroying wrong. Terence didn't hate her. Somewhere in him, buried under the hurt and humiliation, he actually felt sorry for her, sorry that she'd been so blinded by what looked good that she couldn't see what was real, sorry that she'd valued the appearance of success over the substance of character, sorry that she'd lost him not when he had nothing, but right before he had everything. That's the thing about humiliation, y'all. It either breaks you or it reveals who you really are. Terence could have flaunted that money, could have destroyed Candace online, could have made her life miserable in ways that money and power make easy. But he chose something better. He chose peace and someone who actually valued him. Now, if this story taught you something about character, about patience, about choosing the right people in your life, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Terence's position. And subscribe because we're just getting started with these stories. I'll see you in the next one.